Did you know the most famous diagram in archaeology is missing its most important line? For thousands of years, we've been shown the same cutaway of the Great Pyramid, a clean triangle of stone sliced open, like a model, a narrow descending passage diving into the bedrock, the sharp turn into the ascending passage, the low tunnel to the Queen's chamber, the soaring grand gallery climbing toward the King's chamber with its flat granite ceiling and tiny air shafts pointing at the stars. Freeze that image in your mind. Now ask, what's not there? Every textbook, every museum animation, every school poster quietly tells us the same story. These are the passages. These are the chambers. This is the entire interior. The message is clear. We've mapped it all. We know how it works. The mystery is over. But old legends tell a different story. High above those familiar corridors, in the very heart of the stone, something is hiding. Not a crack, not a tiny gap. A corridor, a space as long as the grand gallery itself, suspended above it like a ghost passage, but no one can walk. It does not appear on the diagrams we grew up with. It does not fit the engineering models that say every block has a purpose. And yet, it is there. Modern teams have used cosmic rays, the same invisible particles that rain down from space every second, to scan the pyramid from the inside out. When those rays pass through solid stone, they leave a faint trace. When they pass through emptiness, the trace changes. That is how a hidden void was revealed, a silent shape stretching above the known galleries, in a place that should not be empty if this is only a tomb. Think about that. The most measured monument on Earth, the angles surveyed to fractions of a degree, the blocks counted, weighed, and modelled, and still a major internal structure appears that no one can enter, no one can photograph, and no one can explain. Archaeologists call it a void, as if it were just an accident of construction. But what really happened inside the minds of the builders? According to the stories, the Great Pyramid was not only a monument for a dead king, it was a living school, a training machine for consciousness. To the initiates of the mystery schools, a passage hidden in stone could also be a path hidden in the soul. What if this unseen corridor was known to them as a way or a gate? Not a hallway for feet, but a map for the journey after death, a secret channel between chambers of initiation and the invisible realms of the duat. Most importantly, why would anyone carve a perfect corridor that no human was meant to walk? Tonight, we are not just asking where this hidden passage lies, we are asking why it exists at all, and what kind of knowledge, what kind of training or transformation might be encoded in a corridor that begins and ends in mystery. We'll find out together. Welcome back to the channel. Here, we explore the mysteries, history, and forgotten lore of ancient Egypt, slowly and calmly, so you can relax, unwind, and drift off while learning about one of the most fascinating civilizations in human history. From the pyramids and hidden chambers beneath the sands, to the gods, pharaohs, and ancient stories carved into temple walls along the Nile. If you enjoy relaxing history like this, consider subscribing and joining us for more journeys into the ancient world. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's return to the sands of Egypt. What is this corridor really? So what is this corridor really? How do we talk about a passage that no human has ever walked in a monument measured down to fractions of a degree? How can we see a hallway that has never been lit by a torch, never echoed with footsteps, and yet shows up as clearly to our instruments as the Grand Gallery itself? Did you know that the Great Pyramid is already a maze of angled shafts and hidden chambers? A descending passage dives into the bedrock. An ascending passage breaks away and climbs toward the Queen's chamber and the long vaulted Grand Gallery. Above that, the King's chamber sits like a granite heart, capped by 5 narrow relieving chambers. For thousands of years, that was the official map. Clean, finished. But modern detectors tell a different story. When teams from the Scan Pyramids project bathed this monument in cosmic rays, a new volume appeared. Not a fantasy tunnel, not a rumor, but a measurable void, roughly comparable in volume to the Grand Gallery, floating above it like a hidden twin. No doors, no ramps, no staircases connecting it to the passages we know. So what is it doing there? Why would master builders, capable of aligning millions of blocks to true north, carve a corridor that seems to lead nowhere at all? And why does this hidden space sit almost exactly on the sacred central axis of the pyramid, the same invisible line that runs through the King's chamber, the so-called air shafts, and the very apex of the monument? Orthodox explanations scramble to keep up. Some say it is just a stress relief cavity, a clever way to lighten the weight above the Grand Gallery. Others imagine a construction ramp, an abandoned passage, a leftover from trial and error building. But what really happened inside the planning of this stone giant? If every other major space has a clear structural logic, why does this one feel like a question mark carved in limestone? Old legends tell a different story. According to the stories of the mystery schools, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb for pharaohs, but a training device for the afterlife. A kind of 3-dimensional textbook for the soul. In that language, a corridor that begins and ends in darkness is not a mistake. It is a ritual path, a model of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld, where the soul passes through gates, confronts guardians, and emerges transformed. In this episode, we are going to hold both lenses at once. On one side, the hard numbers of muon tomography, engineering diagrams, and stone-by-stone archaeology. On the other, the ancient vocabulary of the Duat, the initiatory journey, and the secret curriculum of priests who rehearsed death before it arrived. We'll find out together what kind of knowledge might be encoded in such a hidden space. Because this is not just a corridor inside a pyramid. It may be one lesson in a much larger stone classroom, part of a whole network of forbidden schools carved beneath temples, pyramids, and desert plateaus. So in the next part of our journey, we will step, layer by layer, from the outer casing blocks into the unseen heart of the monument, from textbook diagrams into a symbolic labyrinth that may have trained pharaohs to walk the gates of the afterlife long before their final breath. Inside the stone, mapping the known labyrinth. So let's step through that stone curriculum together. Did you know that when you enter the Great Pyramid, you don't go up first, you go down? The original passage slopes sharply into the earth, a narrow, claustrophobic tunnel called the Descending Passage. For thousands of years, visitors have crawled through this low granite throat, feeling the weight of millions of tons of stone pressing overhead as the light from the entrance fades behind them. At the bottom waits the subterranean chamber, hacked deep into the bedrock. It feels raw and unfinished, more cavern than royal suite. The floor is uneven, the ceiling low, the air heavy. Egyptologists see it as an abandoned burial plan or a symbolic underworld. To an initiate of the mystery schools, it might have been the first gate of the journey, a ritual descent into the dark, into the hidden belly beneath the pyramid's perfect geometry. Halfway down that shaft, a junction suddenly appears. A tight opening breaks upward from the descending passage, like a secret decision point, carved into stone. This is the start of the ascending passage, the path that turns the initiate away from the depths and toward the inner labyrinth. It climbs toward the heart of the monument, eventually leveling into a horizontal corridor that leads to the so-called Queen's Chamber. The Queen's Chamber is smaller, tucked quietly in the pyramid's center. No sarcophagus, no golden throne, just a pointed roof, smooth limestone walls, and mysterious shafts that angle out toward the sky. Officially, they are ventilation or symbolic afterlife channels, but old legends tell a different story. That these were spirit paths, invisible gates for the Ba and Ka to travel between worlds. From the junction, if we keep climbing instead of turning toward the Queen's Chamber, the space suddenly explodes open. We step into the Grand Gallery. This is no simple hallway. It is a steep, soaring corridor with corbelled walls that lean inward in precise tiers, like a stone funnel aimed at the stars. The floor rises, the ceiling stretches high above, and every surface feels tuned, aligned, deliberate. At the top of this gallery lies the King's Chamber, a resonant granite room containing a single empty sarcophagus. Above it, a stack of 5 low relieving chambers steps upward within the masonry. Their purpose is clear: to divert the crushing weight of the pyramid away from the chamber below. Their shapes are box-like, their inscriptions limited to workgang marks and names of pharaohs and priests, their engineering function well understood. Because of this, most researchers believed the internal network was complete, a functional system of access routes, symbolic burial rooms, ventilation shafts, and structural voids, all mapped, measured, and modelled. The known chambers had clear roles in both engineering and ritual. The relieving chambers proved that hidden spaces could be entirely practical. But what really happened is stranger. Modern scans have revealed a large, cleanly bounded volume above the Grand Gallery that does not behave like a relieving chamber, a shaft, or an access tunnel. It hangs there in the stone, like a missing lesson in a curriculum we thought we'd finished. What kind of knowledge was encoded in a corridor that goes nowhere we can see? Why hide a perfectly shaped void where no human eyes were meant to look? And most importantly, is this just a structural trick or a silent gateway in the pyramid's initiatory journey that we have not yet learned to read? We'll find out together, because the next layer of this mystery begins where our maps run out. From tomb to temple, the pyramid's other story. To understand what that hidden corridor might mean, we have to step back and ask a basic question. What was this giant stone mountain for in the first place? For thousands of years, the official answer has sounded simple. The Great Pyramid, we are told, is a tomb. In this view, everything inside is about one thing: protecting a royal corpse. Khufu's body lies at the center, sealed away with grave goods, guarded by millions of tons of stone. The descending passage is just an access tunnel. The Grand Gallery, a sloping hallway to move blocks. The King's Chamber, a stone vault for a sarcophagus. It is a monumental grave marker, a locked safe for a single dead pharaoh and his journey into the afterlife. But when we actually walk that internal layout in our minds, the story begins to feel thin. No painted walls, no long lists of offerings, no obvious place for piles of treasure. Instead, we find narrow shafts pointing to stars, a strangely precise granite box, and those mysterious voids that do not match a simple burial plan. Did you know that old legends tell a different story about what pyramids were for? According to the stories, the Great Pyramid was not only a tomb, it was a machine, a temple, an initiation device. In this older thread of interpretation, pyramids are not just places where the dead are stored, they are places where the living are changed. Imagine a hidden curriculum running under the surface of Egyptian religion, not the public festivals and the sunlit courtyards, but secret teachings passed in whispers between pharaohs and priests. These were the Egyptian mystery schools, elite circles of initiates trained in what the soul really is, how the duat is structured, and how the stars and the underworld mirror each other. None of that would be carved on open temple walls. It would live in rituals, in memorized texts, and in the architecture itself. In that light, the pyramid stops looking like a stone coffin and starts looking like a stone syllabus. Each passage is a lesson, each chamber an exam. The tight descending passage might reenact the first plunge into darkness, the sudden turn into the ascending passage, a symbolic refusal to remain in the realm of the dead. The Grand Gallery, a long, echoing climb toward a higher state. The King's Chamber, not just a burial room, but a laboratory for transformation, where sound, breath, and stillness trained the mind to walk the gates of the afterlife. Here is the pattern interrupt. What if the internal passages are not primarily about getting to a body, but about staging a journey, a ritualized encounter with death while still alive, a controlled fall into terror and then a guided return? If that is true, an unexplained corridor is no longer a construction mistake or a leftover ramp. It becomes a missing chapter in the initiatory path, a reserved way for a level of training we have forgotten, a symbolic route for the soul, perhaps used rarely or only by a few who reach the highest gates. So when cosmic rays reveal a corridor that goes nowhere in stone, we can ask a different question. Not, what did this store, but what kind of knowledge did this encode? In the next section, we follow that question into the heart of the mystery schools themselves, and into the rituals that may have once filled those silent chambers with living breath. Who was allowed in? The pyramid as a forbidden classroom? To answer that, we have to ask a harder question. Who was ever meant to walk these inner paths at all? Did you know that even in ancient times, most Egyptians would never have seen the inside of a pyramid? For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid was not a public monument. It was a controlled environment, a layered filter for human presence. At the outer level, during construction, the base and lower passages were the realm of workers and overseers. Torches shouted commands, sledges grinding over ramps. The descending passage was a work corridor then, filled with dust and echoing with tools. Foremen, engineers, and a few trusted scribes could move through these lower angles, checking alignments and hauling blocks into position. But as the monument neared completion, the pyramid changed roles. The rough work ended and ritual work began. Access narrowed. The higher ascending passage, the grand gallery, and service corridors became the domain of priests and specialized attendants. These were the technicians of the sacred, trained in incense recipes, timing of hymns, and the choreography of opening and sealing hidden doors. Above and beyond them lay the true sancta, the king's chamber, the so-called queen's chamber, and the tight shafts and cavities around them formed a closed world. Only the highest ritual specialists and the pharaoh himself were meant to cross those thresholds in ceremony. Old legends tell a different story than simple burial. They speak of nights when only a handful of white-robed figures climbed into the darkness, chanting names of gods that most people never heard. Contrast that with ordinary Egyptian religion. Outside, temples offered open courtyards, bright sunlight, and public festivals where statues paraded through the streets. Myths were sung aloud. Children watched. Offerings smoked on wide altars. But inside the pyramid, there were no open plazas, no crowds, no color, only closed, narrow, cooling stone, where the air thinned and sound wrapped around you like a cloak. According to the stories, the goal here was not just to bury a body, but to rehearse a transformation. These inner rites aimed at conscious mastery of death itself, learning to navigate the duat, to pass its gates, and to return as an Ak, an effective, luminous spirit. Most importantly, this was training, not theory, a living curriculum encoded in angles, chambers, and silence. Imagine you are chosen as an initiate. Your eyes are covered. Hands guide you forward. The temperature drops as you leave the festival courtyards behind and enter stone that swallows light. You hear a door grind shut, bolts sliding into sockets. Another opens ahead, then closes. The passages tilt, narrow, rise. Every change in slope, every low ceiling, feels like a sentence in a language your body has to learn to read. What kind of knowledge is this? When geometry becomes scripture, the priests around you murmur fragments of the book of coming forth by day. Your heartbeat matches the slow echo of their steps. Somewhere above, in darkness no torch has touched for millennia, a hidden corridor waits, unreachable by ordinary means, invisible from the routes you're allowed to walk. Was that secret void a classroom for the highest grade, a path reserved for those who had already died to fear, a corridor that even other priests never knew existed, used only when a pharaoh or master initiate was ready to attempt the final passage? But what really happened in a place like that, where stone ends and the journey of consciousness begins? In the next section, we follow the traces of those rites, and we'll find out together how the mystery schools may have turned the Great Pyramid into a machine for awakening. Voices from the deep past, the first witnesses. To trace those rites, we have to listen to the voices that reached us across the sand, not from the pyramid builders themselves, but from later witnesses who swore Egypt guarded a secret curriculum of the soul. One of the most intriguing is the Greek writer Plutarch. Living in the 1st century CE, he walked through Egyptian temples long after Khufu's time. Yet he insisted that behind the public rituals, there were hidden teachings, reserved only for initiates. According to the stories, the outer ceremonies were a veil. The real work happened deeper inside, in dim corridors and inner chambers, where priests whispered meanings that were never written on the walls. Did you know Plutarch actually says that the myths of Isis and Osiris were not simple tales, but encrypted lessons about the journey of the soul? He describes processions, secret names, and symbolic deaths acted out in the dark. He hints that those who passed through these schools did not just watch the rites. They became the myth, step by step, gate by gate. But Plutarch was writing more than 2,000 years after the Great Pyramid was finished. So why does his testimony matter? Because he is not alone. Herodotus, 5 centuries earlier, spoke of Egyptian priests who guarded ancient books and would only reveal fragments to foreigners. Later Hermetic texts, attributed to the god Thoth, describe sacred libraries where wisdom was locked away in 42 special writings. Clement of Alexandria, a Christian teacher living in Egypt, even gives us a list. He says the Egyptian priesthood studied 42 canonical books of Thoth as their core curriculum: hymns, astronomy, medicine, rituals for the dead, and, most importantly, the science of the afterlife. Old legends tell a different story than simple tombs. Priests memorizing long sequences of spells, standing in temple halls lined with papyrus scrolls that mapped every gate of the Duat. For thousands of years, those books were not only ink on fiber, they were spoken, sung, enacted. Imagine initiates walking through a temple laid out as a cosmic diagram. 12 chapels for the 12 hours of night, underground chambers for the hidden regions, roof shrines for the stars. If later temples were 3-dimensional scriptures, encoding the soul's journey in stone, what does that say about the Great Pyramid? Older, more precise, aligned with the sky to a fraction of a degree. What if the Great Pyramid was the prototype of this entire system, a monumental book you entered with your body, each passage a verse, each chamber a chapter, each change in angle a gate? If Plutarch, Clement, and the Hermetic writers preserve even an echo of a real initiatory science, then a question opens like a hidden door. If the temples and tombs were chapters in a vast stone-written canon, could the unexplained corridor revealed by modern scans be a missing page, a layer of the text that even the later priests forgot, waiting behind the limestone for someone to read it again? And if that corridor is a sentence in an ancient language of architecture, what kind of knowledge was it designed to speak when a living human finally passed through? Cosmic rays in the king's house, how we found the void. To answer that, we have to do something the ancient priests could only dream of. We have to read the pyramid with particles from the stars. For thousands of years, explorers crawled through the known passages, tapping walls, measuring angles, suspecting there was more than the familiar descending passage, ascending passage, Queen's Chamber, King's Chamber, and the steep Grand Gallery. 19th century engineers noticed odd stresses in the masonry. Early 20th century researchers spoke of anomalous echoes and temperature pockets that hinted at hidden chambers. The pyramid felt hollow in places, but they had no way to see through 6 million tons of stone. Then, in the late 1960s and 70s, a new kind of experiment was tried. Physicist Luis Alvarez set detectors inside another pyramid at Dahshur, using subatomic particles called muons to search for voids. His team did not find a secret room there, but they proved something astonishing. Cosmic rays could X-ray a pyramid without drilling a single hole. That early attempt was like the first hieroglyph scratched on a fresh papyrus, waiting for someone to write the full text. Decades later, that text began to appear. Around 2015, an international mission called Scan Pyramids assembled physicists, engineers, and archaeologists with a single goal: to scan the Great Pyramid itself. Did you know they used multiple sensors at once? Infrared thermography to look for strange heat patterns in the casing stones, precise 3D modeling, and most importantly, cosmic ray muography, muon tomography, to map the interior density of the monument as if it were a human body under a cosmic CT scan. How does this work in simple terms? High-energy particles rain down on Earth from deep space every second. When they hit the atmosphere, they create muons, tiny, fast particles that pass through rock almost as easily as through air. Detectors placed inside and around the pyramid count how many muons arrive from each direction. Solid stone blocks, many of them. Empty space lets more through. When the detectors see an unexpected bright region of extra muons, it means there is a cavity, a gap in the stone, a hidden chamber no human eye has seen. In 2017, the data revealed something no one expected. Above the sloping Grand Gallery, along the central north-south axis, there was a large unknown void, not a little crack. A space roughly similar in volume to the Grand Gallery itself, stretching at least 30 meters, maybe more. Its distribution of muons suggested an elongated form, like a corridor or a tall layered chamber, suspended in the heart of the pyramid, like a secret thought. But what really happened in the minds of the researchers when they saw it? Pattern interrupt. This was not where a simple relieving cavity should be. It does not line up with the known series of small stress relief chambers above the king's chamber. No passage from the descending or ascending system appears to touch it. According to the stories told by the stone, every major space in the pyramid is woven into a precise geometric and symbolic pattern. This void sits exactly on that sacred axis, too deliberate to dismiss as a random construction gap. So what is it? A hidden school corridor for initiates? A symbolic sky tunnel for the pharaoh's afterlife journey? Or a structural feature we still do not understand? We'll find out together as we follow the trail of clues left by both the ancients and our own cosmic ray rituals of measurement, deeper into the king's house of stone. A corridor that breaks the blueprint. To understand why this hidden corridor is such a problem, we have to compare it to something we already know. The Grand Gallery, directly beneath it. Both are stretched along the same north-south axis. Both are long, narrow, and elongated, rather than boxy. Did you know the new void is roughly comparable in volume to the Grand Gallery itself? Almost like a ghostly double hovering in the stone above. That mirroring is not random. The Grand Gallery is a steep, sloping passage, rising like a stone ramp toward the king's chamber. Above it, the muon scans reveal a space that is straighter, more horizontal, but marching in the same direction, over the same core. It feels as if the pyramid's internal blueprint has been folded, one gallery below, one gallery above, creating a secret twin that no ancient visitor was ever meant to see. Now compare that to the relieving chambers above the king's chamber. Those are completely different in character. They are low, flat cavities, stacked one on top of another like stone pancakes, each capped with massive granite beams, and finally, a peaked roof. Their purpose is clear: redirect the crushing weight of millions of tons of masonry around the royal chamber below. The new void is nothing like that. It is not a tight, layered stack. It is larger, more continuous, and it sits in a different zone of the pyramid, running along the body rather than hovering right above the king's chamber ceiling. If it were just another stress relief cavity, why break the pattern that already works so perfectly? Mainstream explanations have tried to catch up. Some engineers suggest it is the ghost of an internal construction ramp, a passage used to haul blocks upward and then buried. Others propose an oversized stress relief cavity, a belt of emptiness to lighten the load. A third idea imagines an abandoned passage started by the builders, sealed off and never used. But each of these proposals hits a wall. The geometry of the void does not match the spiral or zigzag ramps proposed in construction models. It is too straight, too aligned with finished corridors to be a leftover scaffolding tunnel. As a stress relief space, it seems redundant because the existing relieving chambers already perform that function with elegant precision. And most importantly, an abandoned corridor clashes with everything we know about the pyramid's obsessive accuracy. This is a monument where tiny alignment errors are measured in fractions of a degree. What are the chances the builders simply changed their minds and left a huge, cleanly defined cavity buried in the core? For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid has been praised as the most carefully designed stone structure on Earth. Every chamber, every angle, every passage appears to belong to a coherent plan. Yet here, above the Grand Gallery, is a major internal feature that fits no accepted functional category. It is not a known ramp. It is not a normal relieving chamber. It is not a clear mistake. So what kind of knowledge would require a corridor that mirrors a sacred gallery, yet remains forever unseen? Old legends tell a different story, and in the next part, we follow those legends into a possibility that makes this hidden space feel less like a construction problem and more like a silent ritual instrument waiting in the dark. Why hide a corridor in the first place? So, if this corridor is not a mistake, not a relieving chamber, not a storage niche, why bury it so deeply that only cosmic rays can see it? Did you know there is no doorway to this space, no carved lintel, no ancient graffiti hinting, "This way to the secret room"? The Great Pyramid is mapped in painful detail, yet this passage leaves no obvious scar on the surface, no crack, no seam, no staircase leading up. To find it, we literally had to turn the sky into an X-ray machine and let particles from distant galaxies sketch its outline in silence. That is not casual hiding, that is architectural invisibility. So the question shifts. It is no longer just, what is this corridor for? It becomes, what kind of knowledge would justify this level of concealment? Imagine the effort, hauling millions of blocks, calculating angles down to fractions of a degree, then reserving a full-sized internal space that no living visitor would ever walk through. A space with no practical role, no airflow, no easy access, walled away behind meters of stone. What kind of ritual needs a room that no one can enter, yet must still exist. Most importantly, who was this for? Not for workers, not for tourists, not for storing tools or grain. If this is not for storage, not for air, not for weight, then what was supposed to happen here? And who was meant to undergo it? Are we looking at a corridor for bodies or a corridor for consciousness? To begin answering that, we have to step out of the engineering mindset and into the Egyptian imagination. For thousands of years, the people who built these monuments did not see death as an end. They saw it as a dangerous journey through the Duat, an immense underworld threaded with rivers of fire, caverns of knives, and gates guarded by beings that demanded passwords. According to the stories, even a pharaoh could be lost there forever if a single name, a single spell, was forgotten. In that world, secrecy was not just paranoia. Secrecy was a protective spell. Names of gates were whispered, not shouted. Rituals for crossing the underworld were copied onto papyrus and then buried with the dead. Priests guarded their schools of the afterlife like fortresses of knowledge, because the wrong person with the right words could, in theory, open doors that were meant to stay closed. So what happens when that same culture designs in stone? Corridors stop being simple hallways. They become trials, thresholds, silent exams for the soul. A hidden passage might not be meant for feet at all, but for the car stepping out of the body, following a path only described in secret texts. Old legends tell a different story than our textbooks, and we'll find out together what those legends suggest. To understand why a corridor would be hidden beyond reach, we have to follow the Egyptians into their own curriculum of death and rebirth, into a world where every chamber is a page, every gate is a question, and the only correct answer is transformation. The Duat, map of the invisible corridor. To understand a hidden corridor in stone, we have to step into a hidden corridor in the sky beneath our feet. The Egyptians had a name for that invisible realm. They called it the Duat. Did you know that for them, the Duat was not simply heaven above or hell below? It was a complete, structured world beneath and beyond the visible one. A secret landscape that the sun god Ra entered every single night. As Ra's solar boat slipped below the western horizon, priests imagined it sailing into black rivers, through caverns and chambers no living eyes could see. This underworld was a complicated world, filled with rivers of darkness, lakes of fire, and islands shrouded in mist. According to the stories, there were towering caverns where the walls dripped with venom, and vast halls lined with silent, watching spirits. Most importantly, the Duat was threaded with narrow ways and hidden gates, each one guarded by serpents, demons, and strange gatekeepers who responded only to secret names. Old legends tell a different story than a chaotic underworld. The Duat was organized. It was divided into regions or hours, often 12, mirroring the 12 hours of the night. In each hour, the soul faced new trials, sandbanks that swallowed boats, upside-down fields, tunnels of knives, and flames that burned the unworthy. To pass a gate, the traveler had to speak the correct spell, make the right gesture, or offer the right words of power. Progress was never automatic. Imagine moving through a pitch-black corridor where every doorway asks a question. What is your name? Who is your god? What is the name of this gate? In the Egyptian imagination, the wrong answer did not just mean a delay, it meant annihilation, being cut apart or trapped forever in a lower chamber of the duat, far from the light of dawn. For thousands of years, this is how Egyptians understood death, not as a passive sleep, but as an active journey that demanded preparation, knowledge, and courage. The heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, but reaching that hall of judgment required surviving the journey itself. Spells from the Book of Coming Forth by Day were not poetry. They were a technical manual for navigating a dangerous system of corridors, gates, and guardians. So what kind of knowledge did a soul need? Names of demons, layouts of regions, rituals to open doors. The duat was a cosmic maze, and every correct word was a key. But what really happened when pharaohs and priests rehearsed these passages in the dark? Here is where architecture fuses with myth. If the afterlife is a sequence of hidden corridors and gates, then carving that journey into stone becomes almost inevitable. A pyramid, with its rising passages, sealed chambers, and secret shafts, becomes a physical duat, a rehearsal space where initiates could walk the path of Ra before their final night. And if that is true, then a mysterious corridor inside the Great Pyramid may not be a mistake of engineering at all. It may be a map of an invisible road. But how exactly does the Great Pyramid's internal layout echo this underworld journey? And where, inside that mountain of stone, would such a duat corridor hide? In the next section, we step back into the geometry of the pyramid itself and follow the lines that lead straight toward the unexplained void. 12 gates, countless trials, the rules of the underworld. To follow that invisible road, we have to understand the rules of the world it leads into. The Egyptians believed the duat was not chaos. It was a system, a labyrinth, with laws. Did you know the night itself was imagined as a sequence of tests? They spoke of 12 hours, or gates of darkness, each one a threshold the soul had to cross. Every gate had a name. Every gate had a guardian. Sometimes a cobra spitting fire. Sometimes a towering deity with a knife. Sometimes a whole squad of demons waiting in silence. And none of them moved aside unless the traveller spoke the right words. This was not poetry. This was procedure. In the books of the netherworld carved inside royal tombs, the journey unfolds hour by hour. The soul sails with Ra through caverns, lakes of flame, and narrow causeways, stopping again and again at closed portals. At each one, a formula must be recited. The name of the gate, the titles of the guardians, the secret phrases that prove the traveller belongs. Where did those formulas come from? From the sacred texts that lined Egypt's hidden schools. The earliest are the pyramid texts, covering the chambers of Old Kingdom pharaohs with vertical columns of spells. Later, the coffin texts spread this knowledge to nobles, painted inside wooden sarcophagi. Eventually, these streams flow into what we call the Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, copied onto long rolls of papyrus. According to the stories, each spell was a tool, a password for a gate, a protection against a serpent, a map for a fork in the underworld road. Most importantly, everything depended on precision. This was a cosmos where mispronouncing a single name could be fatal. Say the guardian's title incorrectly, and the gate does not open. Fail to recognize a deity's form, and the soul is turned back or attacked. Forget a line, and a waiting monster devours the heart. Old legends tell a different story than a gentle automatic heaven. Here, knowledge is survival. So the pharaohs prepared, high-status officials prepared. They commissioned customized cheat sheets for eternity. Walls of limestone became pages of a cosmic manual. Sarcophagi became stone textbooks. Papyri were packed beside the body, covered in vignettes showing each gate, each guardian, each ritual gesture, so that the soul could rehearse the entire sequence even after the tomb was sealed. But what really happened before the tomb was sealed? Imagine an initiatory corridor inside a pyramid, narrow and echoing, its walls once painted or inscribed with the same gates and guardians of the duat. Imagine priests leading a living pharaoh through in darkness, stopping at marked points, demanding the correct spell, the correct name, the correct response to a terrifying image only they could see by flickering torchlight. What kind of training would that be, to walk the underworld while still breathing? And if such a corridor existed, could the unexplained passage inside the Great Pyramid be its last surviving trace, or only the beginning of something even stranger, practicing death while alive? The shocking twist is this: the highest initiates did not wait for death to meet the duat. They rehearsed it while their hearts were still beating. Not in dreams, in stone, in darkness, inside corridors that force the living to move like the dead. Did you know that, according to the stories, pharaohs were not just rulers, but living candidates for death and rebirth? During the great Sed festivals, a king who had ruled for decades would symbolically die, run a ritual course, and be enthroned again, as renewed. Around him, priests staged Assyrian dramas where the god was murdered, dismembered, and raised from the underworld. These were not simple plays. They were training manuals in motion for the greatest mystery of all: how to come back. Old legends tell a different story from the idea of passive tombs. They speak of hidden schools where only a few were admitted to underground chambers and locked temple crypts. High priests of Anubis and Osiris guided select initiates through nights of ritual, trance, and controlled journeys into darkness. Imagine being led down a narrow passage, torches extinguished, the stone pressing in on every side, as a voice behind you intones spells about rivers of fire and gates that only open to a name. In these schools, knowledge was not just read, it was carved into the body. Initiates memorized long sequences of spells from the Book of Coming Forth by Day and related texts, then recited them in pitch-black spaces where vision was useless. No paintings, no guiding torches, only the scrape of a hand along cold limestone, the hollow echo of one's own voice, and the slow, measured breathing taught by the priests. Over hours, the map of the duat was burned into muscle memory. Turn here at the fifth gate. Speak this name before the serpent. Stand firm when the guardian roars. Now bring that discipline into the Great Pyramid. Picture an initiate lying in the sarcophagus of the king's chamber. Body still, heartbeat loud against the granite. From the grand gallery beyond, a chorus begins. Low, resonant chants, timed to the chamber's strange acoustics. The sound climbs the walls, vibrates through bone, blurs waking and dream. Then silence. Hands lift the initiate, blindfolded or already deep in trance, and guide them through a sequence of confined passages. Each turn, each narrowing, each sudden opening stands in for one of the duat's gates. But what really happened when they reached a passage that led nowhere, at least in physical space? Some researchers see only a stress relief cavity or abandoned tunnel. Yet for thousands of years, initiates may have seen something else. The final exam, a hidden corridor used only once in a lifetime, where the adept was brought to the edge of death consciousness, allowed to die before dying, and then return. Most importantly, this is where the new, unexplained corridor becomes more than an engineering puzzle. What if it was the apex of this training? A stone threshold designed not for the body to pass through, but for the soul to learn how. The corridor as the final gate. Imagine rewinding our mental map of the Great Pyramid and tilting it on its side. Suddenly, the familiar passages become a vertical ladder. Below, the descending passage dives into the bedrock. Above it, the ascending passage and grand gallery climb toward the king's chamber. And then, higher still, on that same central axis, hangs the unexplained corridor like a hidden final rung. As below, so above. Did you know the Egyptians loved this kind of symmetry? The grand gallery is the visible, dramatic causeway of stone, the exoteric path anyone can walk with a flashlight and a tour group. But the void above it, aligned like a ghostly echo, feels different. It is the same gesture, repeated at a higher octave. A secret path above the known path, a mystery gallery above the gallery. This is where the idea of a final gate becomes hard to ignore. Every other corridor in the pyramid connects to something. This one, as far as our instruments can tell, connects to nothing. No staircase reaches it. No shaft opens into it. No ancient graffiti points the way. Its isolation is not an accident. It is a design statement. A gate that is not for the many, but for the one who has already passed every other threshold. So what would a gate like that be used for? Not for regular traffic, not for hauling blocks. Think instead of a resonant chamber, suspended in stone. The grand gallery below already behaves like a tuned instrument, amplifying chants and footsteps. A corridor directly above it could act as a harmonic twin, a place where priests or initiates used sound rituals to call up the higher aspect of the king. Imagine a single voice in total darkness, tones climbing the walls, the air itself vibrating like an invisible ladder. Old legends tell a different story as well. According to the stories, the pharaoh's bay soul did not simply drift into the sky. It followed precise routes, sky tunnels in the duat, mapped by stars. The Great Pyramid is already aligned with circumpolar stars, the imperishables that never set, symbols of immortality. What if this hidden corridor encodes one more of these routes? A stone beam aimed at a specific stellar gate, a destination in the underworld sky. Most importantly, this turns the corridor into more than an empty space. It becomes a training ground for the soul, a place for sensory deprivation and visionary experiences where the initiate's body stayed in darkness. But consciousness was guided along that invisible axis from Earth to the deathless stars. So we are left with a charged image, a corridor that leads nowhere in stone, yet everywhere in spirit. A final gate, carved into the heart of the world's greatest monument, then sealed, forgotten, erased from human maps. But if this was the last gate, what kind of knowledge waited beyond it? And who, if anyone, still holds the key? We'll find out together in the next layer of this mystery, step by step through the invisible passage. To follow that last gate, we have to walk the path the initiates walked, step by step, gate by gate. According to the stories, a typical night journey through the Duat followed a precise rhythm. The soul approached a gate. A guardian appeared, sometimes a serpent, sometimes a lion-headed being, sometimes a silent figure holding a knife. A demand was made, a riddle, a question, a name. Who are you? What do you know? Speak the secret. The initiate had to answer with the exact spell, the correct title of the god, or the hidden name of the gate itself. Say the words correctly, and the guardian did not just move aside, it granted a boon, a new form, a boat to cross a lake of fire, a protective charm for the next trial. Miss a syllable, and the journey ended there. Did you know some funerary texts even script these exchanges like a dialogue, line by line, as if they were rehearsed scenes in a sacred play? Now imagine this not as a one-time test, but as a curriculum. In the mystery schools, priests and pharaohs would have practiced these encounters again and again in the dark. They repeated the same sequences until the tongue moved faster than fear, until the body itself knew when to bow, when to speak, when to be utterly still. Over time, the response was no longer memorized. It was embodied. The guardian's question and the initiate's answer became one movement, like inhale and exhale. Then map that inner training onto the Great Pyramid stone. First, the long descending passage, a plunge into darkness, steep and narrow, angled down into the bedrock. Then the sudden break, the hidden ascending passage branching upward, low and tight, forcing the body to crouch, to compress. After that, the space explodes into the grand gallery, a soaring ramped hall where sound stretches and multiplies, where a single chant can bloom into a chorus around you. Each turn feels like a gate, each change in height and width, a new guardian. The Queen's chamber, with its strange shafts, the silent weight of the King's chamber, granite absorbing every heartbeat. For thousands of years, people have noticed how perfectly this journey mirrors the soul's passage through the 12 hours of night. But what if the hidden corridor is something more? A 13th, unwritten gate above the mapped path. No inscription, no guardian with a known name, just the unknown itself, waiting where no scroll can help and no rehearsal can fully prepare. Old legends tell a different story about such thresholds. They say the final trial is not about speaking, but about being, not about a password, but about presence. Most importantly, this pattern is not locked in stone. Encounter, response, reward. We live it every time we face fear, choose a direction, and emerge changed. So what happens when a civilization builds that pattern into its greatest monument, then hides one last passage beyond the visible journey? What kind of knowledge do you encode in a gate? No one is meant to walk in the body, but everyone is meant to meet in the soul. The next layer of this mystery may show that the Great Pyramid was not just a map of the afterlife, but a mirror of our own unfinished passage, and we have only reached the 12th door, echoes in other mystery traditions, and we have only reached the 12th door. But what if this hidden gate in the Great Pyramid is not alone? What if it belongs to a much older language of secret corridors and underworld journeys that stretches far beyond Egypt? To see it, we have to step out of the desert for a moment and walk into other ancient mystery schools. In Greece, at Eleusis, initiates also descended into darkness. Did you know that for thousands of years, citizens, philosophers, even emperors traveled there to undergo a rite so secret that revealing it was punishable by death? They entered long halls and underground chambers, watched a drama of a goddess losing and recovering her child, and were led through symbolic death and rebirth. No one wrote down exactly what they saw, but everyone agreed they came out changed. The pattern sounds familiar. A chosen few, a guided journey through darkness, a promise of a different relationship with the afterlife. It is not a burial. It is training. If we look east, the echoes deepen. In Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna descends through 7 gates into the underworld, stripped of power at each threshold. In Greek myth, Orpheus walks into Hades, facing guardians and conditions at every step. Later, Hermetic and Gnostic texts describe the soul rising through the heavens instead, passing hostile powers, giving names and passwords to move from sphere to sphere. According to the stories, the universe itself is a layered temple, and the soul must learn the codes of every door. This is not just poetry, it is a curriculum, a map of gates, challenges, and precise responses. What kind of knowledge is this, if not a manual for conscious passage through unseen realms? The architecture follows the myth. Across the Mediterranean, we find underground crypts, beneath temples, hidden side chambers behind sanctuaries, and carved false doors in stone walls where no human can walk. To a modern visitor, they look pointless. To an initiate, they were thresholds, symbolic portals where offerings, prayers, and perhaps the soul itself crossed between worlds. Egyptian tombs are filled with these false doors. Greek and Roman temples echo them. Even early Christian catacombs build on the same idea. A sacred underground, a city of the dead, mirroring the city of the living above. Here is the pattern interrupt. The Great Pyramid's unexplained corridor may not be a bizarre exception. It may be the most monumental, mathematically precise expression of a motif that appears everywhere, a hidden path reserved for those willing to undergo inner transformation. Not a hallway for feet, but a corridor for consciousness. Most importantly, this wider lens shows that imagining the Great Pyramid as a school of the soul is not an isolated fantasy. It fits a global vocabulary of mystery traditions that used real stone, real darkness, and real fear to rehearse the afterlife while still alive. The question now is simple and unsettling. If this corridor is part of an initiatory journey, where exactly was it meant to lead the living? And what were they expected to become on the other side? We'll find out together when we step back inside the pyramid's stone labyrinth. What the corridor demands of us. So where does that path really go? Not just in stone, but in our own minds. When we step back from the maze of passages, a pattern begins to emerge. Hidden above the grand gallery, the undetected void hangs like a ghost corridor, perfectly real in the data, yet untouchable by our hands. Engineers have tried to tame it with simple answers: a stress relief cavity, a leftover ramp, an abandoned construction trick. But the numbers fight back. The scale, the alignment, the careful placement above the most dramatic space in the pyramid do not behave like an accident. At the same time, old legends tell a different story. For thousands of years, Egyptians filled their texts with hidden ways in the duat, secret roads the soul had to find in darkness. Their priests mapped invisible corridors through the afterlife, threading past gates, guardians, and judgment halls. Inside their temples and schools, they turned architecture into a rehearsal of that journey, using narrow shafts, sudden chambers, and crushing silence as tools to shape a person's inner world. Did you know the Grand Gallery itself has been described as a kind of stone initiation theatre, a steep, echoing ramp where torches, chanting, and the slow climb upward could imprint the idea of ascent through the underworld. Now, directly above that ascent, the muons reveal another passage, not for feet, for something else, but what really happened inside that void. Most importantly, what kind of knowledge could be encoded in a corridor we cannot even enter. Here we have to admit our limits. There are no inscriptions on its walls that we can read, no artifacts we can date, no soot, no bones, no clear ritual traces, only measurements, angles, volumes, resonances with what we already know about Egyptian beliefs and their obsession with the hidden. So how do we hold this mystery without rushing to choose sides? On one extreme, it is just a ramp. On the other, it is a magic tunnel to the stars. Perhaps the wiser move is to let the corridor remain a question, a prompt to rethink what a building can be. Not only a machine for stacking stone, but a machine for shaping consciousness. When we imagine that unseen passage, when we follow the trail of cosmic rays, hieroglyphs, and myth, we are already doing what initiates once did, walking an invisible road with no guarantee of arrival. According to the stories, the duat only opened to those who had trained their perception, who had become the kind of person capable of reading its gates. Maybe this is what the corridor demands of us now. Not blind belief, not easy dismissal, a different kind of attention. A willingness to let awe and humility sit side by side. Some secrets, especially in the Great Pyramid, are not simply withheld. They wait, they test, they ask whether we are ready to change in order to understand. And as we follow this hidden line through stone and sky, another question appears on the horizon. If the pyramid is a machine for transformation, what is it still trying to do to us today? Standing at the threshold, if the pyramid is still trying to do something to us, then this is where we feel it most, standing once more before that familiar cutaway image, the descending passage, the ascending passage, the Queen's chamber, the King's chamber, the Grand Gallery, all the paths we learn to trace like a map of stone. But now, there is a new line drawn through that picture, a ghost corridor, hovering above what we thought we knew. Did you know that for thousands of years, artists and explorers have sketched this same interior, certain that every passage had been named and measured? Yet cosmic rays revealed a hidden space, a silent gallery resting above the Grand Gallery like a shadow. It has no doors we can walk through, no obvious ramps, no agreed upon purpose. It is there and not yet ours. Maybe that is why it feels like a mirror, a passage in stone we cannot enter, perfectly reflecting the passages within ourselves we have not explored, the fears we keep sealed behind polite routines, the questions about meaning, death, and the afterlife we push down when the lights go out, the potentials, the gifts, the strange intuitions that press against the edges of our lives like a blocked tunnel in the dark. Old legends tell a different story about places like this. According to the stories, initiates did not avoid these hidden chambers. They prepared for them through rituals, chants, and nights of waiting in the dark. They approached the unknown like a gate in the duat, knowing that to pass through, something in them had to change. But what really happened when a priest or a pharaoh finally faced that inner corridor? So here is the gentle challenge this stone puzzle offers. What hidden corridors in your own life have been quietly mapped by experience, but never walked? A conversation that feels dangerous. A study, a practice, a mystery school of your own that keeps calling. What kind of knowledge waits on the other side of the gates you have not yet opened? And most importantly, what would it look like to approach them with the same courage, patience, and preparation as an ancient initiate stepping into the dark? This series is our shared training ground for that kind of journey. From the Great Pyramid to underground labyrinths, from temple acoustics to the secret books of the priests, we'll find out together how other architectures and texts may be tracing invisible paths through consciousness. Each episode is another step along a corridor we are still learning to see. As the camera pulls back, the pyramid settles under a field of stars. The cutaway fades, leaving only the outer shape perfectly aligned to the heavens. Somewhere inside, that unexplained corridor hangs in the dark, quiet and patient, like a thought not yet spoken. Some doors do not open with keys or drills or scanners, but with questions we refuse to stop asking. And as long as those questions continue, this mystery is not finished. It is only the beginning of the next passage.